The United States doesn't just sell weapons, it dominates the trade. Roughly 43% of the global arms market is under Washington's control, more than the next 7 countries combined. In the last 5 years alone, U.S. arms shipments to Europe have more than tripled. And in May 2025, America sealed its largest ever defense deal with Saudi Arabia. But there's a darker side to this empire. U.S. weapons deals have fueled scandals, armed future enemies, and left a trail of civilian casualties across multiple continents. As one critic put it decades ago, this is a sleazy policy, and it will always be attended by sleazy details. So how exactly did the U.S. turn guns and missiles into one of its most powerful tools of global influence, and what risks come with being the world's top arms dealer? The story begins in the Revolutionary War. America almost lost its independence because it lacked gunpowder and firepower. France secretly smuggled in weapons that helped tip the balance. That scare made one thing clear: the U.S. had to build its own weapons industry. By the 1790s, the government opened armories and hired private gunmakers like Colt and Remington. Production exploded during the Civil War, and by the late 1800s, American rifles and revolvers were already being shipped overseas. World War II was the turning point. U.S. factories churned out 2/3 of the Allied war equipment, from tanks to planes to ammunition. Unlike Europe or Asia, America's homeland was untouched by devastation, leaving it uniquely positioned to dominate post-war arms production. Then came the Cold War. The Soviet Union backed its allies with weapons. The U.S. countered by arming oil-rich states like Iran and Saudi Arabia instead of sending large numbers of troops. Between 1970 and 1974, U.S. arms sales jumped tenfold to over $10 billion a year. This arms for influence model became the backbone of U.S. foreign policy. Saudi Arabia quickly became Washington's top customer. Today, 74% of Saudi Arabia's weapons come from the U.S. That dependence ensures Riyadh's security while locking it firmly inside America's orbit. Israel is another story. Since World War II, it has received over $228 billion in U.S. military aid, more than any other country. Unlike Saudi deals, this isn't just about sales. American taxpayers directly fund Israel's defense through annual aid packages, with billions earmarked for U.S.-made weapons. Critics say this has tied Washington too closely to Israel's military actions, particularly during conflicts in Gaza, where U.S. weapons have been linked to civilian deaths. For the first time in decades, Europe, not the Middle East, has become America's biggest arms market. Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine sparked a surge in demand. Ukraine's arms imports jumped 100-fold, with the U.S. supplying 45% of them. Poland is another major buyer, now sitting on nearly $20 billion worth of U.S. contracts, from Apache helicopters to Abrams tanks. The UK remains a close partner, even investing billions into joint projects like the F-35 fighter jet program. But here's the problem: support for Ukraine isn't guaranteed like Israel's. It's debated in Congress and approved case by case, and Pentagon officials warn that draining U.S. stockpiles could hurt America's own readiness. In Asia, U.S. weapons sales are driven largely by China's rise. Japan has doubled its imports in the last 5 years, with 97% coming from the U.S. South Korea is building its own defense industry, but still relies on Washington for high-tech systems. India, once almost fully dependent on Russia, has spent over $20 billion on U.S. arms since 2008. This shift strengthens U.S. influence, but it's risky. India, for example, wants American weapons but resists aligning too closely with U.S. strategy. It's a familiar gamble: arm a partner today, risk blowback tomorrow. The U.S. has a history of arms sales backfiring. In the 1980s, weapons given to Afghan fighters against the Soviets resurfaced in Taliban hands. The Iran-Contra scandal saw the U.S. secretly sell weapons to Iran, then use the profits to fund rebels in Nicaragua, breaking U.S. law and sparking a political firestorm. Saddam Hussein's Iraq once received American-supplied materials, even as he used chemical weapons. Time and again, short-term deals turned into long-term security threats. In theory, the UN Arms Trade Treaty was meant to curb dangerous exports, but the U.S. never ratified it. Under President Trump, Washington formally withdrew in 2019. Today, U.S. arms deals face growing scrutiny. Yemen, Saudi use of U.S. weapons caused mass civilian casualties. Gaza, U.S. bombs linked to civilian deaths are sparking dissent inside Washington itself. Ukraine, cluster bombs and landmines leave unexploded dangers long after battles end. Meanwhile, new technology, from autonomous drones to hypersonic missiles, raises the stakes even higher. The U.S. arms industry is more than business, it's strategy, diplomacy, and power projection rolled into one. Arms sales keep allies close, sustain America's defense sector, and extend Washington's influence far beyond its borders. But here's the catch. Every sale carries risks. Today's trusted ally could be tomorrow's adversary. Every weapon that leaves U.S. stockpiles has the potential to show up in the wrong hands, in the wrong conflict, with consequences that last decades. The United States remains the world's undisputed arms dealer. The question is whether it can keep balancing profit, power, and principle, or whether history is destined to repeat itself.